Hey everybody, I'm really excited about today's episode. I talked with Alton Riggins and we had a really great conversation about building a sustainable approach to instructional design and education and supporting our teachers. He's a teacher turned instructional coach, and he said it first here, he has big plans for starting a YouTube channel and working towards a TED Talk in the future. I so enjoyed learning from him in this conversation, and I think you will too. Without any further ado, here's my conversation with Alton Riggins. All right, welcome to the Building Thinkers podcast. I am so excited to jump into this conversation. We're going to talk about instructional design, education, ed tech, and many things along the way, but I'm so delighted to just learn together and have this conversation. So thanks so much for joining. Do you want to kick off with a little bit of how we got connected?
Sure. Thank you for having me on, first and foremost. It's cool, like the day we connected, I remember it so vividly because I was so like impressed by everybody. And so we were at the what's the name of the I don't even know the name of the group that hosted it.
So it was the Big Picture Learning event that was put on by Carlos Moreno and Andrew Frischman, who are the co-executive directors of Big Picture Learning. It was the event they put on at South by EDU.
Yeah. So at this event, I'm like by myself, and I just see you in the corner, kind of like standing there, like, can I have a little piece of chicken? You know, like, and so that's kind of like the beauty, or what I liked about South by, is everybody that I kind of engaged with was somebody like super dope, you know, like they were kind of practitioners and leaders in their field, and I'm just like there, kind of just like amazed, like looking around, and it kind of just happened organically, you know, like you just so happen to be near me, you know, and from there it's only up from here, you know. It's been real ever since.
Yeah, I thought that was a transformative event and experience and just kind of moment in time. I hadn't been to conferences in a while. I had been in the past. I've been to South by EDU. I've presented. I got to be a mentor in 2016, I think it was, and had just, you know, since the pandemic and everything, had not been at conferences, as many of us hadn't been. And so I felt very socially awkward. I told Andrew and then my other friend, Sean, who introduced me to Andrew, I was like, I have not been out in the world. And so can you just like introduce me to some people so that I won't be standing there awkwardly by myself? And he did that, and you know, then I was still easing my way into having conversations with people, and it was just so easy and fun to talk. And I think we went pretty much straight to, well, after whatever the food was that was happening, there was like those little rolls. You were very into the rolls, but after that, then after the rolls, we were talking about education. We went right into instructional design and a little bit about our hopes, and then there was lots of music and dancing going on, and so we did a lot of that, and then we just kept in touch afterwards to say, hey, let's connect and keep talking about education.
That was the first kind of event that I've been to kind of like that, you know, like I've never really had the hors d'oeuvres and the music and the dancing at a PD, so that was definitely like you know, I think it was that day I was like, yeah, like I'm coming next year, you know, like this is a conference that I have to be at, like I'm here, this is it.
I think we should talk about this more, but I think you should present at it. I think that you should go back and present, and I think
in time.
So yeah, you can go and learn too, but I think when you're ready, sharing your ideas and the things that you've learned. One of the quotes that I have, it's here on my desk, and so we won't see this on the podcast, but you can see it here, from Austin Kleon, Show Your Work. He has this quote that an amateur is the enthusiast who pursues her work in the spirit of love. And I've always enjoyed that idea, because I think we go so quickly to becoming experts, and we're like, okay, if only I have my portfolio, if only I have X years of experience in education. I think that one of the premises of this podcast is, I believe there's exponential power in us as humans, as learners. And so I'd love to capture people at different points in their career journey, at points, different perspectives and different experiences. And I think we need more of that shared, like, what are you learning along the way? So not just the people that already have a book that's out there that are presenting, that have shared their ideas, but also people like you and me that are just doing our work and what we've learned along the way. So again, just thank you so much for agreeing to connect.
So if you let me share a quote, your quote kind of reminded me of a quote that I've heard some time, and to carry the conversation. So the quote was my current or previous superintendent. She's like, you can't grow if people don't know your name, you know? And so I kind of want to get out there, and although I am uncomfortable, kind of just have people know my name, you know, like that kind of forces you into a growth, because I have to get prepared, like a certain level of preparedness to kind of do those things. So I will present, because I have a dream. Like my dream is to do a TED Talk. Like I want to do a TED Talk. They're just so good, you know, like I don't know what.
They're so good, but think about all they did behind the scenes. Okay, this dream is now out there in the world, and you're going to do it.
This is the catalyst, you know, like this is the kickstart of my online presence. So we'll go from here.
So one of the things I was thinking about when you were talking about the TED Talk is that the things that I want to learn to do are usually the things that I will force myself to write a presentation for. That's my tip about submitting presentations. Okay. Even if it's something that it has to be marginally something I know I'll be prepared to do by the time I present, but I like to force myself. I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was ISTE, I think 2018 or something. Oh, I know what it was. ISTE 2016, I presented on competency-based progressions, and I wanted the session to actually mimic, like show how you could do competency-based progressions with a live group. And I was thinking I'd get like 40 people or something, because ISTE's huge, and there's all these. It was in Philadelphia that year, which I think it's going to be again. We were talking about that this next year. It'll be back in Philly, and that was a really fun place, by the way, so you should go to that too. But then, like, a day before, I probably should have looked earlier, because I didn't realize you could see how many people had signed up. And I was, again, thinking like 40. And the day before, it was like 250. And I was like, oh, goodness. Ooh. I'm now going to have to show 250 people how to do competency-based progressions live. And then I really went for it. I had to bring some friends in to help me set up the rotations that I was wanting to do and let people work through those and all of that. But that's my tip about future sessions. Like whatever you want to learn, submit a presentation about that, and then you'll be forced to synthesize research to put into your slides, build examples, add to it. So tell us a little bit more, Alton, about like your background, what brought you into education, maybe what you build now, tell us your story of what you want to share.
So I feel like I've always wanted to be a teacher, you know, like for quite some time, and I got serious in high school. Like that's when I was like, all right, this is what I want to do. I had a couple of influential teachers, and I was like, yeah, like this is it. Do college, do first year teaching went like horrible, you know, like it was kind of really, really bad. So I was like, man, like I need to get better. And so I dedicated those summers to like actually getting better and perfecting the craft of teaching. And now I have like this confidence, and I feel like I'm the best teacher in the world, and I help other teachers become stronger teachers. And so that's where my passion is. I value that I was able to kind of get good at delivering instruction without technology before this push for tech, because sound instruction, you don't need it. Like it's nice to have, but you really don't need tech. You know, it's just how you get creative. So what do we build? So what I feel I build the best learning experiences for students, you know, like students of all kinds. Like I build really dope learning experiences, because, you know, like the quote people, you don't remember what they say, but you remember how it makes you feel, you know? And so I kind of take that approach with my classroom and instruction, and really try to make things personal for all types of learners. So you might not remember exactly the content, but you remember kind of how you felt when I was your teacher. And that's kind of what I want to take into the world.
I love that. And so how did you, when you made the transition from the classroom to coaching and supporting teachers, can you talk a little bit about that, about how that role shifted, what you maybe learned a little bit?
My content area was kind of niche a bit. So I'm a social studies guy. I was always just presented with opportunities to teach the new teachers, you know, like they'll put them next to my classroom, or, hey, like they're in your department now. So I've always been kind of given those opportunities, but because of how my district was set up, there weren't that many formal opportunities for me to kind of be in the coaching position. So it was kind of like exploited labor a bit. Like, hey, you're good at this. We can't give you the job, but you can do this job kind of thing for quite some time. And I had to really find a position. And once I found that opportunity, I kind of like held on to it. And I'm like, yeah, this is what I need to do. I feel like everything, if you're coachable and you can learn, then there's some value in any type of experience, you know? And so I appreciated the exploited labor because that really, I knew I was prepared going into this role, like actually, you know, being responsible for this task, that I was actually prepared to kind of help these teachers develop and grow in the profession. And I always tell my mentees, you know, like I want you to be the best teacher in the world. Like I want you to kind of to have that confidence to really know your craft and your niche, like what's best for you and how you can bring out the best of students. And so I love what I do.
I love that. I hear in that part of it that excites you is helping people almost find themselves, right? Helping them come into their own as an educator. And I also hear a personalized approach to that then carries over to how you want them to support their students, recognizing it's not one size fits all, but also in this educator space. And that's an area that I think a lot about as a former educator myself. I think a lot about professional learning for educators and how far that is most of the time from, you know, high quality instructional design practices. I see this vision of a future that we're not yet to, but an area around is creating learning ecosystems for educators. Just to be frank, I think we can do a lot better by our educators. I'm always really passionate about the research and learning theory, and I want to get to in a minute your master's program and what you've been learning there, because I think that's so key. But just one more moment on this. What do you think could shift things forward when you think about professional learning for teachers? Like, where do we get it right and where do we not? Anything around that speaks to you?
Okay, so currently what I see like happening in the K-12 space, I'm not sure if I'm going to answer your question correctly or not because I have lots of thoughts. What I'm currently seeing are like prescribed curriculums, so that way teachers can have more time to like internalize the lessons and deliver personalized content. So what's happening is when you take out the PLC time of finding the teaks, what do we need to teach, how do we need to teach it, and it's given to you, what can you come up with like a creative space with a prescribed curriculum? So like Wit and Wisdom is a really good example of that, and also like Carnegie Learning for Math, they're coming up. I just believe teacher input, you know, like having an internalization process is kind of crucial for teachers to really deliver the best product, because there's so much that teachers are responsible for. And if you really can't understand like how connect to it on a personal level, you can connect to it like professionally via like your content lens. But if you can't connect to your content on a personal level, then you really are kind of doing half a job, you know, like you need that time to process and internalize and it's unfortunate that teachers aren't really afforded that time to process and internalize, because it's kind of like such high turnover. Like, hey, you got to teach this lesson. All right, now tomorrow we have to teach a different lesson, you know? And so that built-in internalization process really isn't there. But I feel like that's kind of what's needed into making better educational products.
That's reminding me of a friend and educator, Michelle Cordy, who actually, this takes me back to ISTE, whatever year that was. We presented together, but she's an amazing educator, and she talked about how she wants to help her kids see themselves in the curriculum and the time that she takes to like make meaning and all of that. And again, I hear you applying that to our educators that you're working with in helping them to see themselves in their content, make meaning of it, and it's like only from that place can you turn around and provide that same space for your learners instead of kind of one size fits all. And it's tricky because this is one of those where two things can be true at the same time from my experience, because we know based on research that students have to have high quality, rigorous, grade level content, and access to that is one of the highest indicators of if students make progress and closing gaps and things like that. And yet, like, not necessarily overly scripted and not necessarily like there has to be both high levels of rigor and expectation and room for personalization. So it's this combination, at least in my experience and the research we've dug into, of both personalizing and holding high expectations for all learners. And sometimes it's one of those pendulums that swings in education of like too far this way, too far that way. And I think a little bit more of everyone kind of understanding what we really know about learning now, which is a whole lot, and then being unwilling to negotiate on certain things. Certain things, we talk a lot with the clients I work with about what's tight and what's loose. What things are non-negotiables in the work. For example, I work with district leaders saying, this is a non-negotiable in our student experience. And then these are things where you have more flexibility to, as a teacher, modify or shift. And sometimes that language just helps everyone to be like, oh, okay, I have some structure and kind of like guardrails to work within. And I'm also trusted as a professional, as an educator, to also have teaching be both the science and the art. To have the craft of being able, that was one of my favorite things about my own classroom was I was a self-contained bilingual teacher, so I had all the different subjects, and I loved being able to, think about my schedule flexibly because I was self-contained. They allowed me to do that, and because I got good results, they gave me lots of freedom. And that creativity, that's the spark that I think we want to see in our educators, but supporting them to be able to have that protection. There's so many things around that. I don't know if that brought up any thoughts for you.
Well, it is. So what's so something that's happening, like there's this great teacher exodus. And so I'm seeing the value in having prescribed curriculums for teachers who are very new to the practice and kind of don't know what to do just yet. Also, the word rigor, I'm really starting not to like. I feel like the word rigor is so like ambiguous. Like everybody has their own definite, like there's no real standard approach to what the word rigor means. Like what's rigorous to you may not be rigorous to me. And we need to kind of clarify that definition a bit. So when we use it, we're really speaking the same language. But that's my initial thought was teacher turnover, because there are so many people like leaving the profession that are being replaced by these new up-and-coming professionals, first-year teachers, and it's kind of less stressful to be in that situation where you're learning how to teach, because you have to learn how to teach, and then you have to learn how to be a teacher. It's valuable. It's value. You need that learning curve.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about. So you just graduated, right, with your master's? Congratulations.
I did. Thank you so much.
I'd love for you to tell us a little bit about that program. What are maybe some of the key learnings that you think were really valuable in that program that we can learn from what you learned?
Okay, so the program was learning design technology, so curriculum and instruction with an emphasis in learning design technology. So I kind of focused on that LDT portion, like the learning, like the study of how people learn, design and education, and how to kind of the best practices of using technology to kind of facilitate your goals. So first and foremost, shout out to the professors at the University of Houston. Dr. Dogan, he's the reason why I went to that program. He kind of opened my eyes and I was like, oh, like there's more to kind of what I was experiencing at the time. Dr. Susie Gronseth, like they're kind of like rock stars in their field. Mm-hmm. And so I felt very privileged to be able to be like taught by them, but to some, I can elaborate the most about design in particular, like taking a design approach to education. And I think that's where we can really have a lot of conversations, because when I encounter teachers that really deliver poor instruction, in my opinion, it's really like the intention behind the design. Like design affects so many like aspects of our lives, from how our food is arranged to, like we eat with our eyes. So there's some design like that went into kind of how chefs plate your food, or the design of your personal space that kind of blend into your emotional being, And so when you're intentional about how you design the systems around you, I think that is kind of valuable. And when you can take a design approach to really everything, you can really see the creativity in those different spaces and be able to kind of navigate those spaces. And once you know your audience and who you're designing for, that's how you get the most bang for your buck in a way.
I want to build on what you were saying about the chef and plating the food, and it's reminding me of a conversation I had actually on the first episode of the Building Thinkers podcast with my friend Davis Stetler. He was talking about how the packaging for learning, and we were talking about how people make some judgments around the experiences they're coming to far before they see it. Let's say you and I are leading a session, like they make some judgments way before they get to us about whatever the email was that went out around the learning, whatever the kind of container is where all the content lives and all of that. And they decide, are they going to grade papers during our session, or are they going to, dig in? Is this going to be meaningful for me? Is this something I already know? So many things around that.
Well, that's how I feel. So when you really design like content and presentations, you kind of have to plan for that. Like you have to design your media around the learner that isn't going to be engaged. So how do you create these opportunities to keep everybody's attention at all time? And you kind of have to be like quick with it, like you don't really, that's my approach to instruction. Like I don't give you the time to get bored because we're moving to the next thing, like we're trying to keep up. I wish more people understood how to design like their content and their presentation and their class flows. I think about struggling teachers and just kind of how they facilitate their instructional minutes. And I'm like, man, like if you design this into your schedule, you can kind of see some different results, but it's really, I didn't understand how much design really influenced all of our lives. You mentioned like how we package and how we market things, but it's that's why advertising is so big. Like it's a thing. It's a science. On how to get people's attention and how to keep it. Like that's what YouTube is here for. That's what Google. They want your attention to kind of keep you on their platforms, and you have to take that same approach to your instruction. Like you want your learners' attention, and you have to be very creative and design ways to how to get it.
Yeah, and I think about a lot of the ways in which kind of the big companies really leverage that understanding of psychology, understanding of why people do certain things, and leverage it to keep us on our phones, to keep us, watching the next episode. And I think a lot about how we can make learning irresistible in that same way. And I think part of my hope for the future is that lots of smart people like you continue to dig into education, to not settle for something that doesn't take us there, so that we can help all teachers continue to improve in ways that are meaningful to them, that don't feel like this accountability hammer that sometimes comes down, or this top-down approach, and feel much more, again, personalized in the way in which we try to be.
Okay, so no, that makes me think of like future opportunities, and I'm really into immersive learning at the moment, and that's something I kind of spent a lot of time at UH learning, my capstone. So the design of the program, you kind of go into the program thinking of what you want your final project to be. So at the very first semester, very first class, you're thinking about this project that you want to present. Mine was around like immersive technology, so using virtual VR, virtual reality, augmented reality, and kind of mixed reality, how we can integrate those into everyday instruction, and even like outside of instructional time, how can we create design opportunities for these learners to engage with these types of tech in a casual setting, so on your way to the library, on your way to the cafeteria, like creating opportunities for learners at all times, like at all parts of the instructional day, not just when they're in a classroom. How can we extend learning outside of the classroom? That's really where I'm excited to create some opportunities in the future for immersive tech and kind of get creative with that, because it's really a beneficial tool that really hasn't been used quite correctly yet.
Yeah. Let's dig into that for a second. Maybe just tell us a little bit more about what do you think. That's a topic that it seems like could overwhelm some people, or they could be like, whoa,
Okay.
I signed up to be a fourth grade teacher. I don't know how to do all of that. I think my question is there, what would it look like, maybe an example of how you could see in the future that type of technology utilized in a classroom in a way that you think is beneficial?
Okay, so flashcards. Let's take that. You know, most people use flashcards, but if you can take a little time to invest and design your flashcards with like an augmented reality, so instead
Mm-hmm.
of um, telling me what a rowboat looks like, I can kind of see and manipulate,
Mm.
and it's accessible, you know, no matter what type of device. That's really where I see things going, you know, like I shouldn't say this, but I don't really feel any sympathy or empathy for the teacher who's struggling, because that's really an opportunity to learn, you know.
Mm.
You may not be comfortable with this type of tech now, but your students will enjoy and be thrilled to kind of teach and learn with you. And so if you
Mm.
create opportunities where your students feel like you're a part of the learning process as well,
Mm.
then it's like, okay, we don't know how to do these flashcards yet, but let's make it a project, you know, like let's you design some, I'll design some, you know, like let's make this a collaborative
Yeah.
effort on how we can how you as a student want to use this type of tech, you know, like when do you think we would be able to benefit from using this type of tech? So I think flashcards, so virtual reality, I really have some interest with like social and emotional learning, but within a like a VR space.
Ooh.
Kind of take away your senses and kind of see where we can go with that. I'm excited to be able to be in a space to where I can kind of create opportunities and see like, okay, this is where we benefit, this is where we don't. I'm thinking of opportunities like so even mixed reality where you take kind of
Mm.
a blend of both like augmented and virtual. I really think it's a way to be like accessible. You know, like if we can work on a project, you're where you are and I'm where I am. You know, but if we can build a tangible tool together in real time, you know, like I think
Yeah.
that can change the world. And if you start with a 21st century learner, you know, like these
Mm.
are the type of tech that 20 years from now our students will be very familiar with. So we need to find ways to kind of incorporate it now, so that way
Mm.
when they're proficient, you know, like they kind of come with the tools they need in the world that they're going to live in.
One of the things that you were sharing that made me think in just a different way about it was when you were talking about the mindset of the teacher and you were like, I don't have any sympathy for them. I get exactly what you're saying there. How do we help develop the mindset? And I would argue part of this is maybe like a safe place for
Okay.
teachers to not always have to be the expert. How have you helped teachers have a safe space to be able to try and experiment? Because I hear so much of that in the way you're approaching it. Sometimes have you experienced the people that you're teaching not feeling that same way? Is there anything you do to help people get in that mindset of growth and experimentation?
Okay, so what I tell my teachers now is kind of focus on one thing. Focus on one thing. You know, find one benefit to using this type of tech. Like, how can this type of tech make your life easy? You know, so if you don't have to grade, you know, you can scan a room and kind of get immediate feedback and immediate data. That saves you time grading. You know, like how can you leverage this tech to change your life? You know, like it has to
Mm.
be a buy-in for the professor, for the teacher. And so that's the approach. Like what's one small thing that we can tweak to kind of give you some of your life back. You know, like let's
Yeah.
put it back in the teacher's hands. And so that's the space that I live in. So if you want to get creative with a closure, like okay, like let's take this opportunity to try something new. If you want to start the day with something new, okay, let's how can we use this as a warm up? You know, so just finding a small portion of your day to just try it out and kind of get the feedback from your students, from your learners, and just kind of build from there. But you can't get started unless you start, you know. So it's if you
Yeah.
never try, it won't happen.
Back in 2012, 2014, I was doing these presentations that included the model of TPAC. Are you familiar with this? Where it's like a Venn
Okay.
diagram and it's technology, in a circle, pedagogy and content. And it seems very obvious now, but at that time, technology, pedagogy, and content in many of our districts were really, really separate. And they were even almost siloed, right? And so a director of technology might invite us out for work I was doing at that time and not discuss this with the curriculum department, right? And so the idea of really being in the center of that sweet spot of thinking about technology, pedagogy, and content, the question I'm getting at here with that background is, what have you learned about how to leverage technology effectively in service of learning and not the reverse of, hey, there's this cool shiny thing that I want to try just to try. Well, there's totally the right time for that. But when we're talking about in service to learning, what have you learned, or what do you share with your teachers about how to really leverage that tech to support learning? Anything around that?
So the first thought that I have, where you mentioned the TPAC framework or model, there are so many, and so that's something that I learned in this program. Like there are so many different frameworks and models on how to approach like integrating tech into curriculums, and so it's like, hey, just pick one, and and kind of start there. But it's a lot. I try to leverage engagement as the why we're doing this, And so I remember when I did some crowdfunding to get VR headsets for my kids, and a lot of my students only like seen it on commercials, And so when you present a tech that's like, hey, this is awesome, and I want to do this outside of school, if you just introduce some instruction and some content and some pedagogy to it, it's like, okay, yeah, you can play with the fancy shiny toy, but understand that we have work, like there's a reason why we're kind of using this tech. And so having that ebb and flow, that understanding of, yes, we have tech and we have shiny tools and they're fun to use, but the why, the objective, like what's our point? What's the takeaway? If you really don't have any learner objectives, then you're not really learning, like y'all are having fun, but there's no learning going on. I try to kind of exploit the most like fun, new and exciting tech, but have students understand like, hey, we're using these to support learning, not the other way around.
Love it. That was reminding me of also back in my classroom time, I wrote a similar like crowdfunding for the first iPods before they were even like color and all of that for my bilingual classroom. And my idea was to allow my students to listen to books in their native language. And it started my, what now I know is personalized instruction of like stations and using data to inform my small group instruction while students were working on other things. But that just took me back to that because I remember the sweet thank you notes. And they wrote these notes to people all over the United States. And it was just remarkable to them that people would fund our project, people that would never meet them. And so I think that is, that there's one of those examples of the power in technology to bring together and to provide opportunities that were previously kind of inconceivable with that.
Donors Choose it's awesome, man. Like I really was in an organization, a space that allowed us to have the creativity. Like, hey, like if you get approved for this project, go ahead and do it, And so there, with COVID, there were so many people willing to donate, and corporations and all kind of people like willing to donate to kind of help support our goals. That is awesome. So thank you to those patrons that kind of make dreams come true.
What would you say to people who are in a similar role or in other district roles that are trying to support teachers in this moment in time? What would be your advice to them and those who are leading districts trying to do their best to support teachers in this moment?
Well, in general, I feel like anybody supporting educators kind of need to take an approach with like empathy and compassion, because it's a lot in a school setting right now for all types of people. I see all the time where we have these veteran teachers that kind of describe this last year as the toughest year of their teaching career. And things are moving very quickly at a pace, not just for students, but people that are facilitating the learning. And so really just passion and some empathy and maybe even some teamwork and kind of doing things together to kind of make teachers feel supported
Yeah, I love that. It's making me think of the Adam Grant book, Think Again. He has these two quotes. One is at the beginning of one of his chapters, and it's a George Bernard Shaw quote, and he says, "Progress is impossible without change, and those who cannot change their minds cannot change anything." And then he goes on later in the chapter to say, "Most of us take pride in our knowledge and expertise and in staying true to our beliefs and opinions. That makes sense in a stable world where we get rewarded for having conviction in our ideas. The problem is that we live in a rapidly changing world where we need to spend as much time rethinking as we do thinking." And he goes on, that's kind of one of the premises of the book, is like, we need to not be, again, so stuck in expertise and in belief structures that we're not willing to rethink when we're faced with new information. And so to me, this is connecting to where we are in education in particular and in learning. And it seems like the thing that's always kind of boggled my mind is I love learning. And also Instagram and Facebook knows this too, because the ad algorithm is constantly trying to sell me courses of other things I can upskill on and learn. Anyway, so I'm obsessed with learning, but it always strikes me as interesting that as educators, we sometimes shy away from our ongoing kind of learning and growth and ability to rethink when faced with new science, new facts. We get into this, in several areas in work I've done with clients where oftentimes I come in to help with instructional design that's related to a mindset shift. Like that's not just, onboarding people to something, but we want to have like a visceral shift in thinking that might be uncomfortable. And so I love working on projects like that where you really have to step back and think about, why do people hold their existing kind of current beliefs around this or practices around this? We'll call it mindsets and behaviors around this.
Okay, so
yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so I was like, I have a couple of thoughts for those that support teachers. So as an instructional specialist, I was presented with a lot of opportunities to kind of do some intellectually and emotionally rigorous trainings. And in those trainings, I was thinking like, man, this is great for me to take back to my teachers. But I also think like we need to give teachers more opportunities. And it's like, I hate to give people more work to do, but to hey, like you all need to be presented with this type of training, because when, like I said, when you design your courses to make people change the way they feel, not not what they're thinking, but how you feel. That's when you can really dig deeper and get into some like different types of work, But if all the presentations and opportunities they're provided are kind of surface level, then it's easy to just like go by. But when you have to reflect and like really dig in and like kind of contemplate with your soul, like, man, am I really this way? Like how can I change? And so that's what I would say. Like I was presented with a lot of opportunities, and as a teacher of teachers, people like me are presented with these types of trainings. But I think give the people who are in the classroom that are responsible for that type of learning or outcome, give them the opportunity to participate too, because those are the people really doing the work. It's easy for me to go into a classroom or a department and like, hey, you're not doing this right, you're doing this a certain way. But if those people can't really internalize like what I'm telling them, then it's pointless. So really that internalization process is something that I think teachers don't have enough of. And I know all districts are different, and some people out there may really have different types of time to internalize. So I'm not talking to those people, but I think there was kind of a expectation in my organizations for teachers to carry their profession into their personal lives, and that's where the disconnect was. I hear this all the time in my planning meetings. Like, oh, when am I supposed to have the time to do this? And it's like at home. Do it at home. Like if you can't do it here, where else are you going to do it? And that's the biggest disconnect that I kind of see happening in education right now. Like, yes, you're giving me a prescribed curriculum. Yes, I'm supposed to have the time to internalize. No, I do not have that time, And so because things are so taxing for educators right now, I think that's kind of where the benefit or the disconnect is. Like, hey, I'm presenting you with an opportunity that can make your life better, but you have to lose some of your personal time in order to kind of make it happen.
Right. This rethinking how we are supporting our educators in time, of course, but it's, not just adding more to the plate, but a trade-off in what, if you're adding something, where are you getting that time from? And being clear, I always think about how many things were supposed to happen during the off period, the mythical off period in which, you go to the bathroom and call parents and, do those things. And I think there's a lot of awareness now around that, at least in circles and the clients that I've worked with in that area. However, sometimes the awareness does not lead to the action of how to solve this particular design challenge. And yet there's some people doing some innovative work around that, around like opportunity culture and really thinking about different human-centered approaches to staffing. And even the term, I was recently talking to someone about the term human resources changing. Now you're seeing in companies like director of people or just like people organizer instead of like humans as resources. Even our language around how we think about in like our type of economy where it is kind of go, hustle, like you can burn out and I'll just get somebody else to replace. And there is a lot more, I think, thoughtfulness. Maybe this is just the types of things I'm reading and what I'm trying to listen to, but a lot more thoughtfulness now about realizing that is not good really for anybody in long term. And if people really want long-term, high-quality employees, caring about them as full humans and not just what they can provide for the employer is really important. And I think that's an area in education to support our teachers. Like we're going to have to address, I mean, if we're not clear about the numbers of teacher turnover and everything that's going on, you can, read left, right, all over the place. You can see that. But what our opportunity now is, much like we have had during this time of the shifts in the pandemic, we have another opportunity here to, in my opinion, re-professionalize education and really say, what is it that we are doing in, what's the purpose of our K-12 public education? That's where the majority of our students are. How can we really serve all learners there? We know so much about how kids learn. And yet there's still a very large disconnect with practice and that research. And so, I think we kind of have to do a little bit of soul searching of what we really want it to be. And if not now, then when is kind of what I've been thinking. Maybe where we can go from here is what's bringing you hope right now?
Like I'm trying to think from the perspective of the learner, but that's what I'll say. What's bringing me hope is districts now have an awareness and they're making learning accessible. They're really mindful of how to make to reach every learner, and that's something that I think hasn't really been present before. It was kind of like a one script fits all type of thing, but now like we really have this mindset of, okay, how can we touch every learner? And districts are really making that personal investment to kind of have students one-to-one. And when done correctly, you can kind of model your learning infrastructure to have a different type of presence, And so that's what brings me hope, that things are becoming more accessible. Even Facebook or Meta has like an education division. Google has their education workforce. So Apple, like all of these conglomerates have an awareness of the impact they can make for education, and the districts have that understanding too, like, and have made the investment and the commitment. And so we can continue to kind of bring different types of engaging experiences forward because there's so many players in the game now. Before things were very limited to a certain amount of companies, but now that we have this tech rise, I think things are becoming a lot more accessible for a lot of different types of learners. And that really brings me hope. It makes me think of, I want to say it's Project Innovate. And I'm kind of inspired by this, where the premise is for students to kind of solve problems that they see in their school and community by using tech. And so that when you really get tech in the hands of all learners, that makes things possible, and having kids kind of think about the problems that they want to solve in their community creates a community. And so I'm excited to see just kind of what can happen when we do it right. Like when we really kind of make the most of this opportunity that we've been given, and try to make the most impact in these kids' lives, or these learners' lives. It doesn't really have to be kids, because adults are learners too. When you really internalize the output or the outcomes that you want to create, and create that community of togetherness using tech, I think that's really cool.
Love it. Okay, let's get to some fun stuff. Let's do 3 book recommendations, and then will you do 3 ed tech tools that you like?
Book recommendations. Book number 1, Pedagogy, Privatization, and Policy. Like, this book really changed how I see education and kind of what's happening. I know there's some talk in the news lately about how a certain political party wants to kind of privatize government expenditures, and I think that's very a wrong approach to education. But it's happened in New Orleans. Like, currently in New Orleans, like they don't really have a public school system. Most of their schooling are charter options, and so there's some work to be done there. The second book would be Worth Striking For, and we see teacher strikes all across the nation, and very understandably so, because they do the work, man. Like, you all are the pillars of society. There's a certain passion there, and so worth striking for. And the last book recommendation I would say is my personal favorite book, which is not education related at all, but it's called The Autobiography of Red. And it's a novel in verse by Anne Carson. And I love this book for a lot of different reasons, but I really just want to have a community of people to talk to. Like, I want a book club, but just for, like this book, like I want more people to read this book so I can have some conversations, because it's a love story, it's poetry, it's kind of a blend of mythology and like current worlds kind of blended together in one. And so it's a very good read. So those are my 3 book recommendations. 3 edtech tools.
Yeah.
1, I'm gonna go easy 3. So 1 is Blookit. Have you heard of Blookit?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so Blookit, kids are loving that right now. Formative. Because I feel like teachers really need to understand how to leverage like the different types of formative assessments that are at their disposal. And once they can do that, they can kind of really shift their practice. When you can kind of know what everybody's doing and thinking in real time, that's what changed the game for me. So I will go formative
100%.
and Gimkit. Yeah,
okay,
Gimkit.
awesome. In another conversation, another time, I'll tell you about the time I was an EdTech co-founder for a formative assessment company that no longer exists, but I learned a lot about, and so I'll tell you about that. Anything else you're really enjoying right now that you want to share? I think this is so interesting, and just how people like their overall lives and what they're learning. You had around fitness and meditation and that stuff.
My meditation journey, I'm learning. It's a journey indeed, but I was introduced to meditation later in my life, and I kind of reflected like, man, like I could have benefited from this so much as a kid, just having same. Like self-awareness. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And the mindfulness to kind of how you approach everything in your life, so mindful eating, mindful rest, like really kind of internalizing your emotions and like understanding you don't have to really chase those thoughts. So meditation, and that's kind of like my biggest tool, like, or what I love to share with kids, because typically I work in like Title I schools, so a lot of these kids don't know what meditation is, or they just have like an idea of what they see. But when a kid is having a really difficult time, and I pull them to the side, I'm like, hey, like, give me 5 minutes, let me try to change your life, like let's do a meditation, like let's meditate, like let's kind of really see why you're feeling the things that you're feeling. And like I said, that self-awareness was ideal, and I want more people to kind of be mindful of that. fitness. So I really got into like Orange Theory lately, and I've been seeing them all over for quite some time, and I really just jumped in and went ahead. So it was like this summer, my goal is to do like 50 classes. I'm gonna go back
Oh,
to
awesome.
the next school that I work in, like all super buff, but it's that's been cool. So what I really appreciate about OTF is the tech that's involved. And like I'm such a tech guy, like there's some real tech that's involved, and I can kind of see like real time matrix of how my body is
Yes.
performing, and that is cool. Like that's a game changer, So to be able to see that, the Apple Watch does a great job, but the OTF they're onto something, I will say.
Yeah.
And the last thing, mindful productivity. So we as people, as professionals, like like we're kind of expected to be like productivity gurus. Like how do you stay organized? How do you stay focused? And I've been mindful in my approach to my productivity, because sometimes I can get obsessive and like unhealthy with the amount of times that I'm actually spending working. Like when I was a classroom teacher, I was I spent so much time working outside of work, because it was like, okay,
Same.
well, this lesson sucks, so let me try to make it better. Let me try to make it better, and taking a mindful approach to how I do that, how I work has kind of really helped. And I understand like I don't have to get everything done today. Like like I can push some things off till tomorrow. Like what are the most important tasks that I need to do? Like I say, just having that mindfulness on how you approach your productivity, because you are a human and you need time to rest and recover and enjoy your life. And there will always be problems tomorrow. Like if you don't get it done today, it's fine, because you will have 1,000 other things to do. So really taking care of yourself, because you can't pour into others if your cup is empty. I realized like I needed to kind of slow down on like the amount of projects and things that I accepted, because I come from a organization where if you're presented with an opportunity, the expectation is you like do it. There's a lot of voluntold type of things, and so I kind of had to learn how to tell my superiors no. Like every time you tell me yes, I'm saying no to something else. And if you want me to be my best, I need to be able to actually focus on these particular tasks, and I can't do anything more until I get done with that. So setting healthy boundaries, and if
Yeah.
there are listeners out here that need help with that, tell your boss no every once in a while. Like it's okay. It is okay.
Yeah, someone once told me the sentence stem, I don't have time currently to give that the attention it deserves. I like that one sometimes.
Okay.
And then also the if it's a trade-off type situation, I would say like here are the things I'm currently prioritizing. Where would you like me to put this new thing that you're adding? And then sometimes it's like, oh, I didn't realize that those were the things that were being prioritized.
So I was thinking about the whole conversation around like mindfulness and productivity. A question that I ask myself, or what I focus on when I'm meditating, is what do I need most right now? Like, and if I take that approach to kind of what I'm, so what do I need to do most right now? What do I need for me most right now? Kind of setting those intentions, and that kind of dictates how things play out.
That's just helping me have just like a deep sigh right there, because it's so different from the way that I think we are, at least my experience in the world has been very, and a lot of this is self-imposed and also my environment, but very go do. But to your point of what do I most need right now, I think the soundtrack that plays in my mind more often is what do I need to do right now as a Enneagram 3 productivity, like what I need to do. So it is so helpful for me to pause in my own spiritual practices and meditation work. I think about that as well, and it helps me show up better for my clients, for the work that I do, when I'm not starting from a place of go do. I don't know. I think it's connected to kind of abundance mindset and the way in which we see our role and what we have to offer to others as we start with being really clear about what we ourselves need. But I'm not naturally inclined that way, and I can continue to definitely learn.
So I just looked it up. I'm in a type 7, so the enthusiast. I'm an enthusiast, and I believe that's appropriate. I did a couple of quizzes. Like a good friend of mine like sent it to me so I could be aware, and it was like so kind of consistent like across the board, like 3 different websites, and like they all came back like type 7, type 7, type 7. So I was like, okay.
The first book I read on the Enneagram that was helpful for me was this book by Ian Cron. He also has a podcast, but it's The Road Back to You. It's like kind of a primer for the Enneagram that does a good overview.
So you say The Road Back to You, and it reminds me of so last year, the principal that I worked for, she, at the very beginning of the year, we did like the color code, like, you know, like the color surveys where you see, you think about yourself as a child and your kind of predominant personality color, whether you're a red, white, blue, or yellow, red, white, blue, or yellow, and kind of understanding, like, that was the intention and like kind of purpose going forward into this previous school year, you know, like with our coworkers, understanding like who we are as people and kind of how can I relate to you as a red type of personality or a yellow type personality, right. You know, although we are different, how can we collaborate and kind of get the goal done, knowing that we have these different types of personality. And you said the road back to you, and it made me think of that because you kind of take the lens of you as a child and kind of like how much development and like how much a part of your life is influenced by like your childhood. You know, a lot of people don't take that into consideration. They're like, yeah, I'm an adult now, but you're kind of really the same person you were when you were 8. You just a little bit more mature and more aware about certain things, but your heart is still there, you know? And so you just jogged my memory with that.
Yeah, and it sounds like you've done a lot of the deep work yourself, and that allows you to show up for yourself, for the educators you serve and support, and ultimately for the students, you know, in the districts that they're impacting. So I think that you know is often, it seems tangential, but it's actually really core to how we show up in our work and in this important work that we're doing. And so, okay, tell our listeners where they can find you. What kind of things are you interested in people reaching out to you about? You're going to be out there in the world and they'll know your name. So,
okay. So, you can find me on Twitter at Alton Socrates. I need to create a YouTube channel. Like, that's kind of what I want to do. Like, you may see me on a podcast. Again, at the very beginning of this conversation, people, you all heard, like, I'm going to do a TED Talk. And so you're going to hear my name. You're going to see me in more places. This is kind of the very beginning of my journey. And
love it. Twitter
is a very good place to find me at. So find me on Twitter at Alton Socrates. You could talk to me about anything, like any types of tech you want to integrate in your classroom. You could talk to me about any type of experience that you want to create for the learners that you serve. And you could talk to me about Orange Theory. You could talk to me about the book I recommended. You could, you could talk to me about anything. I'm very approachable, so reach out.
Alton, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for joining me.
It was so much fun. I hope we can continue our conversations. We can continue talking about some of these presentations you're going to go do.
That we're going to present together at...
Yes, we have a collaboration opportunity in the future. I think it would be so fun. There's so many things. I love your passion and your enthusiasm for the work that you do, the hope for the future of it. I think you will continue to do amazing things, and I look forward to being friends as we kind of journey together in the work that we're doing. So thank you so much.
Sure. Again, thank you for being here for the journey.
Thanks so much for listening to the Building Thinkers podcast. Don't forget to subscribe and share with your friends. And please leave a podcast rating and review. That helps more listeners find us in the world of podcasting algorithms. You can find out more about my instructional design work at www.buildingthinkers.com. Thanks again for tuning in, and I'll see you all in the next episode. And remember, there's no limit to what you can learn.